Eco Forward is the Way Forward's ethically made t-shirt collection produced by the local Balinese community. Each t-shirt is constructed using 100% certified organic cotton, hand-dyed using non-toxic natural plant pigments, printed using water-based ink, and distributed in compostable packaging. But even more importantly, the kind people that make each t-shirt are treated with dignity and paid a respectable living wage, because that is the way forward.
Welcome back to another episode of the Way Forward podcast with your host, Alec Zeck. This episode, I had on Dr. Stanton Hom as my guest, a fellow West Point graduate, a chiropractor, a dad, an amazing human being. And we talked everything chiropractic, everything going on in the world right now, and really just hung out and had a discussion. He's so easy for me to talk to. I look up to him like he's my big brother. And the dude is one of the most passionate, genuine, authentic, loving human beings that I know. And I say that with the utmost sincerity. Especially having met him in person now too. It's so weird, this virtual game that we're playing. When I get a chance to meet and hang out with people who really get it, I cannot describe how amazing it makes me feel, and the buzz that I get that really just never goes away, that just adds fuel to the fire of why I'm doing what I'm doing, the community that we're creating around this. And Stanton is a huge piece of that, and all the work that he's doing in California. So without further ado, here is the episode with Dr. Stanton Hom. I'm sure you will enjoy it. I know I did. Much love.
Burn all this hate away. Hot sauce on everything. Yeah.
All right. Dr. Stan, how are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, man. I think overall it's been a wild ride, and at the end of the day, I'm grateful, and I feel more on purpose and aligned than ever, and more convicted than ever. So, what more could you want?
Yeah, dude. And it's hard to come down off that high after doing an in-person event, meeting you in person for the first time, man. That was like, I can't describe it well enough. Like I can't find words, because it's like being in a place with all these people who just fundamentally get it, in so many different ways, like the health, the consciousness, like all of it was just unbelievable.
The way that I describe it to some people is, you've been through basic training, and you've been through plebe year at West Point. It's like you go through, and regardless, you're traumatized in so many ways, and you have this rite of passage that you're bonded for life, and then you meet people, and it's like, it's crazy, because it has never failed me in this movement, right? In this movement, there is a phrase that is so just not like professional, but in my world, it's like, no douchebags, man. Like, we show up, and it's like coming home.
Yeah.
And it's like that rite of passage, but it's also just like at the deep soul level, like you're meeting brothers and sisters, like literally like somebody that I would consider immediately a younger brother, taller, bigger, more good looking younger brother.
Also weird, because you look so young, dude. You're like, how old are you again? 43?
I'm 42. Yeah.
42. Okay.
43
Sorry. I messed up there.
Dude.
I messed up there and gave you one more additional year, but it doesn't matter, because you look like you're like 25 in the best way.
Oh, dude, we have a phrase in chiropractic. We always say chiropractic works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's and now it's like validated from quantum healing to just all the different, whatever you want to call it, quantum healing, biohacking, all these, nature, it just works, right? And it's in our lens, I mean, I made a couple posts today that were a little bit more spicy, directed at chiropractors or chiropractic, in that, like, how do you not speak up? How do you not speak up at this stage, knowing that the miracles that are literally at our hands and our fingertips that you witnessed, from your wife's experience to, like, her story is so amazing, you know, and it is like the VBAC redemption birth. Like when you have that in, like, your day to day, like, how do you not speak up, versus what's on the opposite side is a model of healthcare, which I will never, you know, say is unnecessary, in a sense that they save lives. The emergent care is second to none. Honor them, be grateful, and but at the same time put them in their place.
Yeah.
Versus the, like, never, it's not even whether or not they're good people or smart or well-intended, it's just they can't get to a root cause. And if you can't get to a root cause, but then you take it further and you marginalize all the providers who do,
Yeah.
it's wild, man. It's such a mind twist, right?
Oh, brother, like immediately calling them pseudoscientific and quacks and spreading misinformation. Like, I mean, I think of the great MDs like Dr. Kelly Brogan, who legitimately saved my mom's life, right? Like, and all you will find about her, and she's someone obviously who gets to the root cause of every person that she sees. Now she calls them clients rather than patients, because they've, you know, she doesn't have her license anymore. But it's crazy, because every person she sees, she is helping them get to the root cause. But if you were to Google Dr. Kelly Brogan right now, all you'd find is that she's spreading disinformation, not even misinformation, that she's intentionally spreading harmful information to cause harm to people. And it's just so absurd and twisted, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it's crazy to think that, you know, you've been to platform twice. How many people have been to platform? How many people have been attacked when Dr. Ben Tapper swiping through his phone? You're seeing like somebody hacked his phone and he's getting personal texts. They know when he's traveling. One, like, that's acceptable. Like, that is allowed to stay, that hate speech, the vehement vitriol. And on the opposite end, it's like, we meet each other and we're like, dude, you're the best person I've met. Like, you're just like, I would invite over to hold my baby, maybe even invite you to our next home birth. Like, cause you're such a good person. It couldn't be more polar opposite. It couldn't be more polar opposite, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just so crazy, dude. Like, really, when you think about it, like, to see, especially after, just like you said, after meeting all these people who, you know, are framed as horrible people that are like trying to cause people harm, trying to profiteer or make money off of people, like, meeting them in person. And Dr. Ben Tapper is a great example. Like, one of the most genuine, nicest, loving human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And like, I could say that about pretty much every other person I met there too. Just like some of the most genuine, authentic people who are simply speaking because they have had a fundamental shift in their perception, and they're trying to help other people. They're trying to help other people see a better way for health, which actually leads me to a perfect segue of getting into your story, your background. So even getting into the West Point piece of it too. So for everyone listening, Dr. Stan is also a West Point graduate. And I probably made this joke 100 times now. If him and I were still both in the Army, he would be like my boss's boss. So he would be like so far, he'd be a colonel. I'd be a captain. So I'd be reporting to him, standing at attention, saluting him on a day-to-day basis. I probably should be anyway, just out of respect for him. But yeah, if you could just get into your story of how you came to be a chiropractor after graduating from West Point and your whole health story, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, you know. I think the pretty cliche West Point story, you leave home after high school graduation. I think I was 17 and crawling through the mud of, what was it, Lake Frederick or whatever.
Whatever it is.
One of those. Who knows where we're at, right? And all intent and purposes were, you know, pretty typical Asian American, going to be a doctor at some point. Like, didn't know what that would look like. Did all the things pre-med, and made it to Walter Reed and did the whole, whatever you call it, that internship there. And it was like a visceral response, immediate. I was like, I'm not doing this. And it
Wow.
was like, you see brain surgery, you see open heart surgery, you see orthopedic surgery, and all of it to me wasn't like a condemnation of medicine. I didn't have that in my framework at the time. It was more of just like, that's just not me. It's just not me. It's not personal. And it was more procedural, and it was more like watching people, amazing, obviously skilled neurosurgeons, somehow do three-dimensional surgery on a brain with a two-dimensional drawing on a whiteboard, and be like, if we wake him up and he's speaking, we're good. If he's not, I don't know. It's like, whoa, like that's crazy. Really? Like, is that just humility? Is it because you have interns here? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But the guy wakes up and he speaks, and you're like, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
that, it is absolutely astonishing. At the
Yeah.
same time, it was very much like, clear line, not for me. I'm instead going to go into the field artillery, which is another bond that we have.
Yep.
Somehow thought Fort Sill was better. And you go through the whole Army experience, you get deployed, a year in Iraq, and you get the bill of health when you out process. They're like, you are extremely healthy, like max PT, all the things, right?
Mhm.
My brother moving to San Diego, it's, dude, I get totally, you'd laugh at this because like you're out processing all my peers, which, fun fact, I don't know if you knew this, the class of 2000 has the highest attrition rate at the 5-year mark in the history of West Point. FYI.
Wow.
My class,
Well, it's also like your class was the year before 9/11. So
year
it's
before
like,
9/11. And so that was a huge factor for us. We did not know what we were signing up for versus, I think, 2002 grads. They were like the most committed because that's what they were going.
I bet 2001 was like the second highest rate of attrition, or maybe because it was 2001, they had like some weird like pressure to like be the guys. I don't know.
Who knows, right?
But like clearly like 2000, like you're like, I did not sign up for this shit. Like
it was like, it was like all my friends, all my peers were like, F this, like we're out, and there's always a thought, like if you ever wanted to go back, I'm sure they'd take you back. You could always make that decision. Everybody was like Harvard MBA, Stanford MBA, the top of the top, Ivy League managerial business, because that's what everybody does. They just go straight into corporate America, probably be a pharmaceutical salesperson, but that's a different conversation, I guess, right? But like my S3 at the time was like, what are you gonna do? I was like, I have no idea. I'm moving to San Diego. He's like, to find yourself. And I was like, pretty much. Like, can you imagine a field grade officer just like, you're getting out with no plan whatsoever?
Dude, that's how my S3 was.
I know, and they like, it's just so funny because they're just like, why would you give up all this? And then at the end of the day, like, didn't realize that I was going to move here to San Diego, become my brother's patient. And he would see me through a new lens that I didn't know at the time, but I just trusted because he's my brother and somebody I've always seen as a mentor. But he was like, he literally asked me, are you okay? I was like, what do you mean? It's like I could see the challenges that you have from a clinical perspective from his end. He was like, dude, clinically, we could diagnose you with 4 very chronic conditions, from gut to PTSD to chronic pain, chronic stress. Just
is your brother a chiropractor?
He's a chiropractor.
Okay, he is a chiropractor. That's cool.
Dude, and he was like in his second year of practice at the time.
Wow.
And so I just trusted, and all of a sudden it was like regular chiropractic care, which I was totally devoted and committed to. And then it was like the window of natural healing that I didn't know about, from yoga, meditation, breath work. We live next door to Whole Foods, to all sorts of things that honestly I didn't know about. In 6 weeks, I was like, whoa. Like I felt like my reset button in the old school Nintendo, like you hit that reset, it starts the whole game over. I felt like I was 17 again. And 6 months later, he was like, dude, you're my healthiest patient.
Wow.
And so granted, I didn't work. I gave myself a lot of time off, grew my hair out like super long, which is kind of weird to think about now. But
I bet you looked really cool with long hair though.
Dude, and honestly, it was a version of healing that I think you witnessed with your mom and your wife. That obviously their kind of shepherd was Kelly Brogan, the queen bee of all queen bees. And, you know, there is a legion of natural providers that witness this, that help guide and mentor and lead patients / clients through that. For me, the thing that was the kicker was I had been habitually a C- English student, to the point where my senior AP English teacher was like, I don't think you should take the AP test,
Yeah.
you know, because you know, English is your second language. And I was like, but Mr. Holmes, English is my only language.
Oh man.
He was just like, he had to like put his foot in his mouth because he was like, oh shit, you know.
What a bold assumption on his part there, huh?
Dude, but in that summer that I started to heal, I took an English class because I didn't have the prereqs, because you needed at least a C or better, but I always got C minuses. I took
All through West Point too. So
all through West Point. Like I barely, you know, you barely make it by. You can't get it, obviously, you know, you can't have bad grades to graduate. Well, some people can have bad grades.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite the GOAT. Dude, but I took an English course and I felt this crazy like thing where I was like, I am so clear on what I'm reading and I'm so clear on what I'm writing. So what I knew was I had levels of social anxiety stuff that I had when I was a kid. I had mild forms of dyslexia that kept me from ever reading a book, ever. Like literally, how do you get through West Point and never really fully read a book?
Yeah.
I was a master test taker because I could figure out how to solve problems that way. But my English teacher, as a prereq for chiropractic school, was like, dude, you're actually one of my best students ever. And I was like, whoa, like I've never, ever gotten that from a response. And so it was almost like this redemption where I realized that my mind and my brain had healed to the point where now, like when I take care of kids, if I could do that at 26 years old, then I don't care what kid comes to my office with which challenge, that there's a level of improvement and maybe even optimal function that is just unheard of today in conventional pediatrics and conventional healthcare. Like no one be able to convince me now, just like no one be able to convince you because you witnessed healing in your mom and your wife, that people can't heal. And so that's just literally what bled into starting chiropractic school. And I mean, I've been focused since then, you know, on just achieving the highest levels of clinical like training and excellence that is in the field, particularly of prenatal and pediatric focused chiropractic care. And I would say that arguably we have one of the top clinics in the world now.
I would probably say the same. Just your intention on it, dude, for real, like your intention on everything is so unbelievable. And you just like the love that pours out of you when you're doing what you're doing, like even watching you adjust my daughter, like Kylie was like, it was just an amazing experience. And he's so careful and so intentional about the way that he does things. I didn't get to witness it, unfortunately, but I was probably chasing Grayson around. But yeah, man, I would venture to say that just based on everything that I've seen, you're probably you're one of the best human beings I know. So I know that you're probably one of the best chiropractors. You adjusted me too, and you're really good at that. So, but I want to ask now, so going to school as a chiropractor, or to become a chiropractor, and this shift that we're seeing that we sort of touched on earlier with chiropractic wanting to become more like allopathic medicine, which is so counterintuitive to what chiropractic is supposed to be about. What was school like for you, and how has, you know, I guess chiropractic school since then, either the one that you went to or just in general, how has it shifted to become more like allopathic medicine? How do we reverse that process?
So that's actually a really good question. I would say it's a really long answer. I guess it depends on how far back you want to go. I would say that chiropractic since its inception has been divided because there were just chiropractic was a new form of healthcare, right? We don't even call it medicine. It's not supposed to be put in the same, even like it's like an oxymoron, chiropractic medicine. Some people want to call themselves that, and it just doesn't fit, right? If you understand the roots of chiropractic. But DOs, MDs, nurses, they all kind of flooded into the profession early on. And that was great because it attracted people that wanted to help people. And what it did though, is because of the different regulations or the lack thereof, is it created like literally hundreds of schools that we that are chiropractic kind of purists would say diluted the principle per se, right? In, over the years, because of that division, because of the Flexen Report 1910, which I'm sure that you obviously have a good background on the whole Rockefeller medicine, the infiltration of industry into medicine created this whole kind of new standard of medical education, and chiropractic wasn't really necessarily exempt from that. The benefit of that is it got rid of diploma mills where anybody could call themselves a medical provider / a chiropractor, and it changed the standard of education in a good way in some respects. Medical, obviously, education got homogenized into chemical-based drugs, right? Our side immediately, just stayed true, increased its standards of academic excellence, clinical excellence, but still very divided in that there were people that back then were subluxation based, spine only, adjusting only, nervous system, that's it. And then there's a division called the mixers, right? And the mixers would just bring in other stuff, which I would say in the modern world would be the functional medicine and biohacker guys.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Which
I see a lot of chiropractors doing that now too. Felt like bringing in functional medicine.
And I would say that, like you see this blending of the worlds today, where if you really looked at the history of chiropractic, myself and Dr. Brad Campbell couldn't be friends.
Yeah.
Because he practices so differently, but he just came through San Diego and I had him check out my daughter, and, and honestly, like he had some input that was like, yes, like that's exactly what I was looking for. So from a chiropractic academic perspective, I would say that this is the reason why you're seeing like so many chiropractors that are going towards that medical allopathic side, is because I call them the cartel. They've been from a regulatory body, trade association, academia, to the actual scientific research. They've been completely captured by the model of allopathy. Yep. And because of that, and they own so much of the market share of who guides the professional aspects of our profession, is they've completely diluted what our self-healing, self-regulating kind of innate intelligence principles of our practice, or of chiropractic in general. And so what we have today, in my experience, the school that I went to, is completely gone. It's completely captured, where I want to say in the last 5 years, they started a PA program. They started, giving shots even in the clinic there.
Oh, man.
And an email came out in the last year that said, all the things that are pretty standard of care from the conventional side about the whole, lockdown and masks and all these things, to the point where they said they were going to recommend the shot, and so at the end of the day, the capturing of natural healthcare is so vast, because I would say as a profession, collectively, we are more outspoken than naturopathy, than acupuncture, than a lot of these kind of, bigger profession, or big, kind of big natural health professions. And even then, we are still captured from an academic perspective. There are a handful of schools globally that still abide by the founding principles of our profession. And I would say what I love about them is that they've become a little bit open-minded about all these other aspects of natural health that obviously are effective, that are obviously like,
and those are the guys who are also bringing in like the functional medicine piece and stuff too, right? Like,
well, yes, I would say in some regards, yes. And I would say that they may do it more in a model that we do, which isn't like a laundry list of labs and a lot of different like kind of objective outcome measures, as much as it is about, hey, like I just talked to a patient last week when Dr. Brad was shadowing me, and I went through the whole concept of how the kids in this family, even though the mom and dad have been very good about making sure that, from masking to lockdowns to distancing, they've pretty much kept their kids out of the standard, experience that has been absolutely a tsunami of a shitstorm for most of our kids, that they can't not be affected by what they see. They know they can't see their friends. They know they're doing things on Zoom. And you have to recognize that they're being programmed by this. And so we had a family bring in one of their kids, 7 years old, and had an immune thing, went to their pediatrician. They weren't a part of our practice yet. And they thought he had strep, negative strep test. And then as soon as the doctor said, we got to do a COVID test, the kid starts banging his head, crying hysterically because he believes he's going to die.
Wow.
And because he believes he's going to kill someone.
Wow.
And this is a family that has been really clear about making sure that all the, that they're communicating appropriately, but what they found was that they haven't left the public school system yet.
Yeah.
And that level of like indoctrination is so ridiculously real today that, in my view, like, I don't know how you go through a program like chiropractic or any sort of natural health perspective and not realize that that is the crux of it, right? That's the crux of it, where families can create an environment where it's uplifting, it's empowering, they're navigating, they're communicating consciously, and they still have this embedded optic in their mind, this belief system that their healthy body can kill someone.
Only one thing ever mattered: helping people. I witnessed how, under the forces exerted by modern civilization, the health and mental well-being of those close to me were wasting away. This compelled me to study widely, from Feng Shui to Vastu to quantum physics. I discovered that gemstones and metals in certain constellations emit waves that create the space for regenerating body and spirit. This is how Somavedic came into being. Just as minerals can be used to generate electricity or to use magnetism, precious stones have qualities that make them prized treasures throughout human history. Following years of development, we today have tens of thousands of satisfied customers who enjoy lower stress levels and sleep more soundly, and whose lives have changed for the better. I know it sounds unbelievable, but that's how the invention of the light bulb must have sounded in its day. Nikola Tesla was right when he said the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. That's exactly what I did. And if it will help a single person, it was all worth it. If you want to wake up full of energy and looking forward to tackling a new day, Somavedic is here to help you.
Dude, it's so sad. Like, I mean, I've had so many conversations on this, and I think that's the thing that, makes me the most upset is what's happening with our kids and what we're allowing. Like, even the concept of, if you buy into, everything that's going on and you take the CDC's data at face value, right? You would see that kids are relatively unaffected by this. And that this shot is experimental, right? So to force kids to receive this shot so that you can feel safe is one of the most selfish things a human being can do. And that's what we're seeing so many, like, even teachers unions that are now saying, we're not going back to in-person learning this coming fall unless all the kids get the shot too. That is one of the most selfish acts a human being can impose upon someone else. It's absurd, man. And then, like, talking about how much kids think are hypochondriacs now, are scared that they're going to kill other people. And then even to the degree that we're raising kids that are extremely social awkward. I mean, even prior to COVID, right? Like, how kids are just so unbelievably glued to technology, don't interact with each other. And then now COVID, they're obsessed with technology. They aren't able to read facial expressions because everyone has a freaking mask on. It is so sad to me what's happening to kids, man.
Dude, it is something I've been speaking out about since the beginning. And it's like, it was already bad. If you practice the way I practice, that the same story happens, right? The same story of the same experience of these families that they've been told by their conventional pediatrician that, oh, this chronic thing, oh, this sensory processing, oh, this oppositional defiance, oh, this nonverbal autism, all this stuff, they'll just grow out of it.
Yeah.
They'll just grow out of it. It's normal. But it's totally, and then year after year after year, usually around 5 to 7, that parents get so fed up because they know that they're being lied to, but they don't have any other resource. They have no way to reconcile that disconnect that's in their intuition, in their personal lived experience, which I love that you talk about so much. And then they find their way somehow through a random ad now on Facebook or some sort of post that was shared somewhere. And they make it to our office and they finally get seen, heard, valued, acknowledged for their experience. And they're able to literally vomit out of their mouth everything that they've felt. And then they're validated for their experience. And then, oh, by the way, do you want us to figure out potentially some of the root causes or root cause of where things are coming from? And then let's talk about what's possible. And it's wild because I'm tired, man. I'm tired of being that one person because there isn't enough chiropractors in the world, right? There isn't enough naturopaths. We think that there's too many. It's oversaturated. San Diego, we can go up and down the street. There's so many chiropractors. But look at Rady Children's Hospital, that once they is it not an uncommon appearance or situation where a new hospital is built and then immediately they're overflowed? Like there's too much of them. There's way more patients than they can handle. And in our world, there aren't nearly enough of us that could meet the need of what's actually out there. And then they find us and there's like, why didn't anybody tell me about this sooner? Is the number one.
Well, dude, and that's what's crazy to me, because like even my perception of what chiropractic was like 5 years ago, I thought, oh, it's just the dude that pops my back. Like that's what I thought chiropractic was.
Backs and cracks, strains and sprains. We always say that going to the chiropractor for pain is like going to the gas station for coffee.
Yeah,
it's nice that that's something that you can get, but in our world, it's like, if you really were able to see and bear witness to the depth of healing capacity, especially in kids, where it could be literally days, not even like weeks and months of work with kids that have been facing these chronic levels of, whether you want to call it neurocompromise or chronic diseases or comorbidities or neurodevelopmental disorders, neurobehavioral disorders. I don't care what you call it, but like parents are shocked that when they come and they're able to express. And then I always tell them, like, if you make it to my office at all, you're alive. And if you're alive, you have epigenetically and neuroplastically an infinite capacity to heal. And so therefore, let's talk from there. Let's talk from that perspective, not like the intricacies of every single minutia of diagnoses to all the treatments that you've done. I don't necessarily need the laundry list of like the foot notebook of all the records that you've had, because that's what's been done that hasn't necessarily worked. And so let's look at you from a completely different lens. And then it's like days where parents are like, are they supposed to like, are we supposed to see results already? Like, are we like, because they just, like these twins that just came in, they've never really acknowledged each other. And then like the second week that they get adjusted, one twin's in the back, or they're both in the back, and mom's always just paying attention. And one looks at the other and goes, are you hiccuping? And she was like, never in the history. Like, there's so much that's there, right? There's so much like, I sense that my brother is doing something. I have a little bit of concern. Yeah. I'm going to check in with this person. I don't care if it's vagal nerve, tonification. I don't care if it's the prefrontal cortex coming online. I don't care if it's the brainstem kind of graduating out of its kind of infancy in terms of like its immaturity of a neurological experience into a full cortical experience. I don't care if it's this corpus callosum that's integrating both sides of the brain. What I know is that neurons are firing in ways that never were before. And sometimes for the first time in their freaking life. And I tell parents, like, because a part of it is still like, I get like goosebumps even talking about, because it's still something I'm in awe of, and I hope I never lose that. But it's a line we just came up with recently. I was just like, because we're training a new doc who's obviously like super experienced and fantastic. I was like, the line is, yeah, we're just getting started. You know, it's
So
like,
rad, dude. I love
it's like
that.
a humble thing, you know. It's not like, oh yeah, we're doing that.
Reinforcing too the like the like infinite capacity to continue healing and go far beyond what you thought you could. It's really cool.
It's wild, man. It's wild because at the end of the day, it drives me crazy, just to kind of go back to what you were asking about before. It's like the capturing of our profession is, I'm not the only one, dude. I'm not even the best in the world, you know. I'm striving, and I try every day to increase my clinical capacities. Always want to increase my compassion and love for everything that I do. Obviously, all these things are moving in the right direction, but I'm sad. You know, I'm sad that I tend to be, actually in this field, I'm kind of like a lone gunman, you know, in prenatal and pediatric chiropractic care. Because just think about your wife's experience, man.
Yeah, man.
Like a VBAC experience that's from all the literal persecution, condemnation that she took personally from the OBs, which I'm not sure if you shared on your podcast yet, nor if I should.
Oh, I can know that. No, dude, you're good. She's fully open about it. I can just share real quick. So, I mean, my wife had a C-section with our son, and she was told when we got pregnant for the second time that she was probably going to end up in C-section again. She wanted to try for VBAC. She was seeing a traditional OBGYN. And around week 26, because this doctor she was seeing, very conventionally allopathic minded, was just like, you know, the statistics point to that you'd end up back in a C-section. That's just how it is. We can try for a VBAC, but she didn't really get any warm and fuzzies on her having the ability to do this. They're like, you want a doctor who's going to empower you, like, yeah, we're going to try our best at least, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that. And so Kylie and I decided to leave that practice and go see a midwife at a birthing center. So literally like as minimal as you can be, as close as you can be to a home birth or a free birth even. And this midwife was like, you can do this. And then she started having regular chiropractic care. I think she had it started a little bit before that with Dr. Ashley Breda. You got to give a shout out because I know you know her, Dr. Stan.
Yeah, I do.
And you know, she would get calls from we were going to OU Med for just some other like precautionary appointments because of her previous autoimmune conditions. She would get calls from the doctors like, hey, like, why are you doing a birth at a birthing center? You're making a huge mistake. This is going to be disastrous. I can't believe you're doing this statistic, that statistic, blah, 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 blah. And then we had the birth, man. And it was unbelievable. So smooth, so easy, so empowering for her because she did it in a bathtub. She pulled the baby up and like, she was the one who did it, you know? And I mean, regular chiropractic care for her, like going to see Dr. Ashley, I want to say 3 times a week for like 4 months. That was like essential and so helpful with getting her to where her body was so ready to birth this baby. It was unbelievable, man. And you can't unsee that, you know, like once you see that and like everything else previously that my family's experienced, it's just like, it just adds another check mark of, yep, like this system tells you that it is this way. This is the only way. And then you see these other ways and you're like, damn, these other ways, not only do they work, they're so much better. There's so much more like potential for just like you said, infinite healing potential. And it's just so hard to, it's tough. It's just tough to see it the other way, man. It really is.
And it's crazy because, and just to give your listeners and our listeners just a little bit of the background, and I know we have video, but I usually just explain it super simply, like this is a pelvis, right? And the pelvis is real estate for baby. It's baby's home, you know, and especially when it comes to delivery and labor and all of that. But when you can identify that a pelvis is, you know, perfectly symmetrical and very mobile and, you know, has good like adaptability, then great. But if you see, you know, an unleveling, or if you see a distortion, or if you see the fact that it's restricted and can't move, does that possibly affect baby's ability to navigate the pelvis and engage and dilate the cervix and, you know, be birthed as seamlessly as possible? It's important enough to be like, maybe, yeah, that's valuable, right? But then when you realize that it's not just structure, it's neurology, right? It's literally how the nerves are communicating to those different structures that allow for proper mobility and alignment, but also determine the robustness of the uterine contractions and the continuous nature and consistency of them, or allow for normal dilation of the cervix. Like, how many births do we hear are 72 hours, and how many, like, you know what, I got stuck at 4 centimeters, and it's like you hear these things that have
Yeah,
become
that was
so
Kylie's story
commonplace.
for her
For the
birth with
for the
Grayson.
first
Yeah.
one, right, for Grayson. And it's so commonplace where I'll ask questions to moms because they'll say, yeah, I read that chiropractic care helps with maybe baby positioning, or chiropractic care helps reduce labor times, or helps me kind of navigate a little bit more comfortably. And I'm like, yeah, those are all super valid. And then at the end of the day, you show them objectively. And then oftentimes this mom comes in, and then all of a sudden you're like, that was your previous experience. And then what's possible with this new experience? And then, like, as soon as you started to share more about like birth center, I was just like, oh, this is going to be so amazing. Cause I know you guys as a family. I knew Dr. Breddy, like I know who trained her, because that person trained me as well. And then you just know that, do I know for sure it's going to be perfect? No, because I never want to strip Kylie and Charlie of that process, because it's theirs, right? But do I know that it's way more possible? 100% of the time. You just know that if you take a pelvis from here that can't move, and then all of a sudden here, and then all the nerves start to communicate better, you just know that the possibility for a more optimal birthing experience heightens. And when it does, it's like, oh my gosh, like the possibility of success and healing and redemption is dramatic. And then what's crazy for me is that you do that for one mom, and then you do that for hundreds, and then you do that over decades in practice, and it's thousands. I'm only 11 years into practice, so I consider myself new still. And then, like you said, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And then you realize, because I read a blog early on in my career, and it was written by a doula, and the title of it was something like, "No, doctor, you're not allowed to not allow me." And you then realize that the discrepancy, just like we're sharing at the beginning of the show about, like, you meet people in this movement, it's like, oh my God, from the character to the genuineness, to the authenticity, to the love and compassion, it's the same divide, that or chasm or disconnect, where you have this entire system that has normalized birth as a condition, that has made pregnancy something, an emergency to manage. And then you realize that the psychological, the psyop that it then becomes, where moms are completely disempowered. They don't recognize the gravity of this transformation, which some of my midwife mentors have said is, it's from maiden to mother, that moms only do once. And that process is not only something that should be empowered, not only something that should be conscious, not only something that should be within the obvious, like, total choice and informed consent of mom, but it is the most biologically miraculous and magnificent experience in all of life, right? If humans are, which obviously we could argue potentially we are not, but the most magnificent, conscious, free species ever to exist in all of nature, at least on planet Earth. And this process of procreating and bringing life onto the planet is the greatest exemplification of the magnificence. And we've totally, like, destroyed it, literally, from a technocratic, overly medicated, mechanistic, reductionistic, perspective of birth, to what you can experience by actually doing less. By actually just enlisting the help of a chiropractor, and then finding that this birth center actually just sees us, maybe you don't really know the outcomes or all those different aspects, but there's an intuitive feeling that moms, dads, whole families are seen, heard, and valued, acknowledged. And then all of a sudden the birth, and then it goes full circle, and it's like, wow, like wild, that healing capacity. Like I hope you guys get that. And I hope somebody's communicated that to you guys. Is the generational trauma that you guys stopped by choosing to have a more conscious birth, that your daughter, who was born with virtually, not all, but virtually the majority of the eggs that she'll ever have, that Kylie's grandkid is already in Charlie, and her birthing experience, complete trajectory shift from where conventional families typically go. I hope somebody's affirmed that in your guys' choice to do that. And then
I've never thought of it that way. No one has. So thank you for that. Cause that, dude, like it's cool. Cause I think of like, even like the trauma healing piece, like epigenetically, like me breaking the pattern of trauma and like parenting my kid, being a different husband to Kylie is another example of that, and it's like seeing it that way with the birth thing too. It's like, wow. It's so true too. So thank you for that.
Well, I would say it is the most important truth in healthcare today. I am biased. I am totally biased. This is my field.
At least you admit it.
This is my specialty. But no one would be able to convince me that there is a more damaging psyop in our entire healthcare system, that convincing moms that they being pregnant and them delivering a baby is a condition and an emergency that must be managed from the outside, because that lays the playing field for when that baby comes out. Like now at this stage, 11 years into clinical practice, I tend to be the only person still that communicates this to moms and ask them the question, right? Like, you're growing a whole human, 2 half cells go into a 26 billion cell being in 9 months, 280 days. Are you consciously controlling that? And not one mom has said yes. Like, it's like, oh wow, like first time that they've thought that this whole process is literally unfolding through the infinite wisdom of nature and God throughout her whole system. And then that baby's born, and somehow you can convince mothers that they didn't do that.
Yeah, dude.
And 2, the baby absolutely needs Hep B, absolutely, is born with a vitamin K deficiency for no reason whatsoever. So let's give them this. And then I think since this book right here, for you chiropractors and practitioners listening, anybody seeing kids, this is written by a medical doctor, manual therapy.
So for the people listening, can you say it, what it is? Manual therapy
in children, written by Heiner Biederman, who is an orthopedic surgeon who used to work on children, but he identified all the research essentially that showed that birth trauma is not just present, it is present in the majority of children born in the optimal settings. In uncomplicated, not challenging births, babies are born with a level of trauma, physical, emotional, spiritual trauma to their system, just by going through the birthing canal, right? Like, we don't recognize that in conventional settings, 60 to 90 pounds of pressure is put on a baby's neck. If you, dad, do that to a child, or Grayson, as he's what, 3?
Yep.
Almost 4. Like, if you did that to, like, they call CPS and it's child abuse, but for babies to be born, that level of traction and rotational force can be put on a baby because it's medically necessary. Yeah. But no one ever even contemplates the fact that, well, I'll ask you, do you know the strength of a uterine contraction?
No clue.
No one does, right? I had to look it up 2 years ago because I didn't know either. I was doing a talk at a birthing center, the amazing birthing center in San Diego, and I looked it up. It's 800 PSI.
Oh my God.
Which I was like, what does that relate to? And I looked it up. It was like the amount of pressure and force that fuels and moves a US Navy steam engine is the strength and power of the female body in birthing a child. Wow. And we think that that's not somehow traumatic for mom and baby. and it is for both. And that's why I am biased in saying that this process and the fact that you guys made a more conscious choice is a literal shift in the trajectory of your family tree in such a way that all of us should just stand in awe and recognizing that you did it all, not just outside of the system, but literally going against what they said. You are going to kill your baby. You are making the worst decision.
Man.
Oh, I'm obviously putting words in their mouths.
Oh, it's pretty much
the
that though.
shaming and the vitriol and the gaslighting that comes in this process lays the playing field for how moms are totally dominated in conventional pediatrics. It drives me crazy, you know. Being a chiropractor who works on both settings, most professions don't do that. Like midwives are with moms and then babies born. There's postpartum care, which is fantastically different and amazing than conventional obstetrics. But then it's pediatricians. There's compartmentalization, and chiropractors trained, especially through the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, we have this landscape of understanding of now it's like preconception, right? Now we have couples that come into our practice because we've helped moms have similar experience to what you're having. And then they come in, they're like, you know, we're thinking about having a baby soon. And we just wanted to get, we really wanted to get into the best possible health as possible. And it's like, whoa, like, what are we, like, we don't market that. We don't like put ads for like, hey, have a baby in 6 months in the most optimal way. Like, you don't, that's not really something, but it's because we've been devoted to this model of care that patients find us and they want to do it the right way. And we don't realize whether it's an epigenetic or it's an evolutionary shift that literally happens in our office that we're humble to on a day-to-day basis. Cause it's like, sweet, 6 months, awesome. You guys are both like mid-20s, you got this, and then all of a sudden, then you start to hear like, well, I have autoimmune and I'm going to be high risk. And you're like, whoa, how about you heal from a lot of that stuff before you conceive? And then it's this wild process, man, that like for me, I didn't know we were going to go there, but I wanted to affirm in you and Kylie, because you guys have made a shift in your lives and your generational tree that both Charlie and Grayson are benefiting from today in every aspect of who their future generations are. Is dramatically transformed.
It means a lot, man. Thank you. I was just thinking on this because like I know that you've talked about so many just amazing, actually I have a two-part question. What made you want to become a pediatrics chiropractor? Like what was the shift where you're like, this is what I want to do?
I'm the biggest kid in my office. No, which is arguable. You know, that might be true actually. I think there's two big reasons. One is I'm the fourth oldest cousin in my family, and so I've seen a lot of babies come through in our kind of traditional Taiwanese, Chinese American family. Like it's very tribal. And so I've spent my whole life like having babies cry in my face. And then my job that I've always remembered since I was really little was like, how do I help them be happy? And how do I help them, you know, obviously love me as their cousin? And some might still say that I'm their favorite cousin. The other one is that I didn't know until later in my career, but my mom's mom is, she was like the town doula. And her sister was a midwife and delivered a lot of the babies all at home because that's what they had back then. And so I didn't realize that, like my mom, when my niece and nephew were born, she's like the baby whisperer. She has this innate thing about just being with babies, and I have that. And so when babies come in and they're colic, and colic is, you know, crying 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, like it's kind of this weird, obscure diagnosis. I've seen babies that cry 14 hours a day. And I still have that mantra in my mind. It's like, it's now like, hey baby, resistance is futile. You're going to love me at some point. You're not phasing me at all, because I've had babies cry in my face literally my whole life. And then you see them, and then you help kind of restore normalcy to their nervous system. And then they pick it up, and then they start healing. And for me, like, I think I knew very early on in chiropractic school that I was going to, and I started all the post-grad training very early on. And then it bled into like realizing that the monstrosity, because it's one thing to start this way, right? Taking care of pregnancy kids, babies is one thing. But when you see the monstrosity and the tsunami of neurodevelopmental, neurobehavioral, chronic diseases in kids, which as of 2011, a 10-year-old study, more than 1 in 2 kids has a chronic problem, all of which have been normalized by conventional.
Isn't it 54% to be
It's
exact?
54%,
Yeah, 54%, which is just.
That's 10 years old. You have to realize that's a 10-year-old study. And so what we know is that it's way worse. And what we know is that 18 months ago started a literal onslaught of tyranny and oppression on our children that no one is speaking up about, man. And it's the few of us that are, and then we get deplatformed, and then we help each other grow our accounts again. And then, you know, that's been that's been one of my single focuses, is just recognizing and airing how this has been affecting our kids.
Yeah, man. It's, oh, I could talk about that for days. Let's talk. Let's talk
Was that both parts of the question, or did I miss one?
No. I have another one.
Okay,
This,
cool.
This is part 2.
Yeah.
What has been like the coolest healing to witness, like that you help facilitate, right? Like, cause it's their body doing it and you're facilitating it. What has been the like coolest thing that you've ever witnessed?
The coolest thing I've ever witnessed, I would say, God, it's so hard to say, you know, because I mean, I would say that even in the last 6 weeks, we've had so many stories where just recently, like, one mom comes in and they're a natural family. They see a natural pediatrician who's a homeopath. They've not vaccinated. And this little girl was so, like, she's become so sensory processing in the last 18 months that she went from being very picky about foods already. She's still nursing, which mom was like, do I still nurse? I'm like, absolutely. Because her
nurse as long as you can, right?
Well, nurse as long as you can, but her palate like has gone from like being very picky to 2 foods that are only eaten in one way: bananas and yogurt. That's it.
Oh,
so
wow.
She doesn't eat any other food. Wow. And so,
how old?
She's 3.
Okay.
And she, like, they come in and she's totally afraid of me. She's very like, when sensory processing is not just food and palate, it's like sound, light. Like, she has light sensitivity. You can tell that there's some sort of adrenal / sympathetic overdrive. You can tell her vagus nerve is totally just kind of blown out. And it was like her 3rd adjustment. Mom was like, yeah, she tried more foods. I'm like, what do you mean she tried? Like, nonchalant. And she's like, no, like, she's trying the foods that she ate before when she was picky. And I was like, just watch. Like, I'm telling Dr. Ryan, because he's not used to seeing like these chronic cases. And it was like a week later, and she's like, we went to like a birthday party, and I didn't want her to eat it because it was so bad for her because it was a birthday party. But she went ham on birthday cake and all these snacks. And she was like, I was like, you have to celebrate that, even though it's not what you want her to eat. Like, she won, like, her, and then she was like, no, but she just played and she enjoyed her time. And she realized that, you know, like, she's a social being, you know. And at the end of the day, it was like, mom's crying in my office, mom signs herself up, and then she's like, you know, dad's kind of come along about 6 to 12 months later. But when you think about this process from a picky eating to a palate to a nutrition / nourishment to all that stuff, which is totally cool. But on the opposite end, where this little one at 3 years old, which, you know, we're social beings from the womb, her ability to kind of navigate a social setting is dramatic. Or like, literally a couple weeks ago, one of our patients said that their teen stopped wetting the bed literally every night. Wow. And then she was just like, she got so excited because she realized that she can do sleepovers. And you're like, you don't realize that it's a condition,
Yeah.
enuresis or whatever, but you don't realize the fallout of how that affects this child slash teenager and what she's able to do and not do in terms of like actually be a normal kid. And at the same time, on the opposite end, not to go down that route again, it's like, well, what do they want to give them in conventional worlds?
Yeah.
It's there's nothing they have for them except go to that psychologist, go to the psychiatrist, and then eventually it's going to be some sort of psychotropic drug because it's probably some sort of chemical imbalance in their brain that these two young girls would start with, right? And so in my world, I could literally go on and on and on, but those two are pretty miraculous because what else do they have?
Mhm.
And
Dude.
then like literally your family story is something that we hear like almost every day in our practice. You know?
How much gratitude do you have for, this is probably such a rhetorical question, for your brother though, man? Like cause like your brother helped facilitate this, and like the person you are, I have gratitude for your brother, dude, because like now I like know you and have gotten to know you so well, and you're like a brother of mine. And it's I mean, bringing you into this space, like, do you guys still like talk and stuff and hang out and everything?
Yeah. I mean, he's always going to be my like literal first mentor.
Mm.
And I would say that first summer of my own healing, I just trusted. You know, I didn't know my left hand from my right hand. All I knew is that my gut and my intuition said trust and listen. And then it was a very visceral response that I couldn't deny in myself. And at some point, because I didn't know I was going to go to chiropractic school, and then he did say, like, dude, you got to go to school, man. Because I thought I was going to be like a holistic trainer or a Czech practitioner, and I'd done a couple of Paul Czech courses.
Oh, okay, Paul Czech. Okay,
and you go down this route of like, oh, I could do this without like a licensure, and then that's why I'm a little bit like, you know, when people say like, oh, you don't need doctors and you don't need, you know, you heal you, fantastic. I totally agree with that. But these kids,
yeah, man,
they do.
That's different.
They need the leadership, they need the mentorship, they need the model, they need the community. And when they start to heal, like Thursday afternoons in our office, I don't know why, it is absolutely apeshit in our office where there's kids, they're in our workshop space. Like you rewind a year and we were still doing it back then. It's like no distancing, and they just like pillow forts and operator and all these, and it's like, whoa, this is freaking nuts in here. And
the community though, man, but it's community though. And like you go to a normal doctor's office, you will never see that in a million years, like all sterile white, like maybe one of those like marble games for the kids to play. But it's like even just the mentality behind it. I remember thinking that when we were at the birthing center, I'm like, it's so sad that so many women don't get to experience this. Like we're in a home setting with dim lights, laying in a bed, and like, okay, I want to move to the bathtub now. And Kylie was almost like, she was like, can I move to the bathtub now? And the midwife was like, you can do whatever you want. Like it's up to you. Like instead of like asking permission, just the whole, every bit of it, man, every bit of it. Like, and I can't even imagine, or I can't imagine what that's like in your office, just the community and the just like vibe is so different than what allopathic medicine has. And it's like, more people need to know about this. Like more people need to know. And then we speak and we're censored. And it's just like, that's why I commend you, dude. And so many other people, and like really myself to some degree, to continue to speak through this, because the reason we do it is because we have witnessed a better way. And we know that all these people who are chronically ill, this way is so much better. We're not trying to mislead people. We're not trying to cause harm. We're trying to show people how to get out of harm and into health. That is what we're trying to do.
It's wild because, to answer your question, like I'm infinitely grateful for my brother. And we, you know, obviously brothers have like drama and that type of thing and judgment. It's so funny because I judged him a lot when he was first a parent, where I would like literally time how long my phone conversations would be with him before he'd be like, dude, I gotta go. And then I had a kid and I was like, oh shit, like I told him the other day, I was like, dude, I haven't served in so long. He's like, no, you know, right? It's so wild because you don't realize that. But the way that I the way that I speak into that today, just to some of your listeners that are practitioners, or some of your listeners who are clients, potential clients and patients, is I tell young docs, I say, you have to realize, because young docs graduate with a certain level of fear and trepidation. I would say most uh, kind of socially have this inferiority complex because there's a whole white coat and, you know, the obviously indoctrination that we've all been obviously blanketed with, you know, in terms of like just putting medicine on a pedestal, conventional medicine. But I tell them, like, on our worst day, literally on our worst day, we are far safer than medicine will ever be, than pharmaceuticals will ever be. And we are far more effective at getting to the root cause on our first day of practice. And it's not to say that that's to marginalize and to persecute medicine. It's just to say that's not their model.
Yeah.
Is
Like you said at the
inherently
beginning,
reactionary.
allopathy has its purpose, and its purpose is emergency and acute care. Like, I'd want to be nowhere else except for the United States if I were in an emergency or an acute situation.
Totally.
Like nowhere else. But and then I think back to how chiropractic is in so many ways being captured by that. And then I, commend. That's why people like you are so unbelievably important, brother. Like you are doing the work to counteract that and to show people a better way and show people this is what chiropractic and really what all these natural mechanisms and methods for health are all about.
Up until 18 months ago, I would have been like, I kind of brushed it off. And then after like the last 18 months and recognizing it's not just the small subset of chiropractors that still abide by the principles of chiropractic, but it's the smaller subset that actually see the things that I am so blessed to see, but even the smaller subset that are actually willing to stand up and speak out in a time like this. I encourage, I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm habitually strategic, and I want more chiropractors to recognize that nobody sees what you see, more so now than ever. And those that do what we do in terms of the prenatal and pediatric chiropractic focus and specialists, nobody absolutely can even have a concept of what you actually experience. And so your oath and your obligation to stand in that power to grow your business and your practice and your community as big as possible. But what I want to encourage you all to do, and this is for everybody really, there's a line that, Ben Tapper said, conviction greater than your complacency, right? Having conviction greater than your complacency. But I would say even further that the conviction that you're being called to live into on the far side of that is the community and the practice of your dreams. You don't realize that it is literally the fact that we have been willing to step into the fray and actually speak out in this time, that we've also received these bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood that are there's no undoing it, man. You started, I didn't want to be on Telegram, but then you started to invite me to like different groups, and then you start to see like, holy cow, this isn't a big group of people that are willing to speak out. It's much bigger than obviously our group, but then you realize that we're all like literally in that same fight together.
Yeah.
And we don't have even a close amount of people. We don't have enough to strategically, in my opinion, just destroy the enemy, but we're still winning, because that's what truth is. And that's what nature does, is nature adapts and persists and consistently,
And we're helping other people see, though. Like, it may seem like we're small, right? But like, we're helping so many other people see, and other people begin to speak. And that's what's so important, man, is just like the awareness and getting people to trust themselves and their own judgment and not be afraid of speaking their authentic perceptions on things. And that's what all of us are really helping other people do. So I have two last questions for you. These are the questions I ask everyone. So this one's a deep one. Why are we here? What is the purpose of this existence, this life that we have?
I think the purpose of our existence is to experience nature in its grandeur, right? The infinite brilliance that is within all of us down to the subcellular level is no different than the brilliance of the universe that is far more vast and expansive than we could ever imagine. And the fact that the human, specifically humans, obviously we could talk about other species, but specifically humans have the most advanced nervous system that exists in the known biological world. It's not just a nerve and a stimulus response, which is what they want to keep us in, the system, the cartel, whatever you want to call them, keep us in fight or flight, on or off, very polarized, very black and white. If you graduate the nervous system all the way up into the prefrontal cortex and the corpus callosum, you recognize that the prefrontal cortex is it's about vision, it's about inspiration, it's about like creating like executive sovereignty and freedom, right? But on the opposite end, the corpus callosum is the full integration of every aspect of our sensory experience, which most people don't recognize. We don't have 5 senses. We don't have 6 senses because people talk about proprioception and body awareness. We have over 109 senses that literally hit our subcortical and cortex virtually every second. Like it is 60 billion or 60 trillion bits of information that hit our nervous system per second. And we're only consciously aware of 50. And so what I know for a fact is that we have a unique obligation to nature to express our highest potential, that if we do that and we experience the entire grandeur of nature and of, you know, God and this entire like spiritual and quantum world in a way that we are made to, like literally designed and made to, that I believe is what echoes into eternity, where we know epigenetic research says that, hey, our choices today echo 13 generations. Well, you better believe that many ancestral tribes knew that. And we are so far disconnected from that. So here in this moment now is returning us to the brilliance and beauty that is in itself the human experience, which I would say is much more about the human being versus the human doing and all the to-do lists and all the accomplishments. But it's also the fact that, I mean, it's an adage at this stage. It's like human beings having a spiritual experience, right? Versus a spiritual, you know, human beings, spiritual beings having a human experience versus spiritual beings having human beings having a spiritual experience, right? It is actually experiencing, expressing that brilliance in ways that we've never even fathomed before.
And we're setting the precedent for future generations.
That's exactly
future generations. That's his podcast.
Right?
Listen to his podcast too.
It's our podcast and that's our practice, right? That is our brand.
Yep. So the last one, this is, dude, I cannot wait to hear your answer on this one. I think there's like 2 people that I would want to hear this answer this question. It'd be you and Dr. Tapper, honestly. Like, so this will be a good one. If you had 2 to 5 minutes to share an unfiltered, unedited message with the whole world, a reporter came up, shoved a microphone in your face and was like, hey, this is going to be on primetime news and every news station all over the world. You have 2 to 5 minutes to share a message you think the world needs to hear. What would you say?
I would start out by saying, which I think we've heard a lot over the last 18 months, right? The body's ability to heal is far greater than we've been led to believe. I would share that, like I shared earlier, the 2 half cells and the 26 billion cell being that comes out in 9 months / 280 days is also done because 50,000 neurons plasticize per second in utero. And we think somehow that there isn't a miraculous and magnificent force that's doing that, right? But I would expand that to say that your family's ability to heal is far greater than you've been led to believe, that your community's ability to heal is far greater than we've been led to believe, and that our planet's, like literally our planetary healing is far greater than we've been led to believe. Chiropractors from the very earliest textbooks would always say the subluxation, the interference in the nervous system is a small thing. The adjustment is also a small thing. But that interference compounded over a family, compounded over a community, compounded over a country, compounded over a globe, that then also is enslaved mentally, physically, and spiritually to stay in the same place with a conventional medical system. But on the opposite end of that, that one adjustment that heals that one person, that heals a family, that heals a community, that heals the planet over time. We called it a utopia that in the Health, Freedom, for Humanity or podcast where you talk about the new earth, it's been in our lexicon and our consciousness as chiropractors from the very beginning. And it's because we recognize that if people were to recognize the grandeur and the beauty and the brilliance and love and compassion that we are birthed with, we are literally birthed with. The spiritual leaders that I've always looked up to have said that the gestational process of any species, but especially the human species, is the greatest form of love and compassion that exists in the known universe. And there's only one way onto the planet. That's it. There's no other way onto the planet today. So no one would be able to convince me that we are not at our root, at our soul, at our deepest level, love and compassion. And because of that, there's no concept to how magical and magnificent our ability to self-heal, self-regulate at the smallest level, but also echoes throughout the universe.
Love it, dude. Love it, man. For real. I love that so much. Brother, I have to bounce because I have another one with my other podcast. So people have probably noticed by now, I mentioned this earlier, this just shifts out and then I put the Health, Freedom, for Humanity one on. So I have another one in 20 or 10 minutes with interviewing Dr. Brad Campbell. Brother, I love you so much, man. I cannot say that enough. Like, seriously, you're like a big brother to me, and I appreciate you so much in this relationship we have, and that I randomly came across you on Maj Tori's Instagram.
It's crazy, and chiropractors, just to end it with this, it's like BJ Palmer would always say, you never know how far reaching something you may think, say, or do will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. One of Ben Tapper says that quote so perfectly. And we don't recognize the infinite number of things. If you don't stand in awe every day of the infinite number of things that had to occur to get you to the here and now, then you don't get gratitude. That you don't truly understand that everything happens for a reason. And I am grateful. I am so infinitely grateful to have this time with you, and then also just to be able to, stand side by side with you as, a bigger brother. I've always wanted to have a little brother. I have a little sister, but I appreciate you, man. I really do.
Yeah, dude, love you so much, brother. Thank you for coming on.